Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Modern Firm, where we speak with leaders in the finance and accounting sector who are modernizing their approach to growth, tech, and operations. Today, I'm joined by Luke Odegard. He's the controller at Frontier Precision and also runs his own consulting firm, Riverwood Consulting. Luke's been in public accounting to banking and now private leadership, so he's got a pretty unique lens on, financial strategy, compliance, and building for the long game. Luke, it's great to have you here, man.
Yeah, thanks, Noah, so much for having me.
Of course, of course. So let's start with your journey. How'd you end up balancing a controller role as well as being a founder of your own firm? That's probably a lot to juggle.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And I mean, it's kind of one of those things where I started my own consulting firm in 2022. And I started small and it's been pretty small, and that has allowed me to grow. And I've been very intentional on how many hours I'm taking on outside of my current 9 to 5. So it kind of allows me to be very selective on who I'm working with, but also I'm very considerate on growing because I don't want to grow too fast in the way of I know I have only so much capacity. So that's kind of been one thing that balancing is good, but now I'm seeing more growth. So truly this year I just started with a new partner in April here, and I brought him on, and I feel like having him is going to help me take some pressure off my hours and then allow us to grow as a firm as well.
Totally, absolutely. Was there a moment where you kind of were like, I need to just start my own firm, or how did that idea come about?
Yeah, so I had one friend he's an entrepreneur and he does a few different things, and I mean he knew I was an accountant, and so he reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I have this QuickBooks project that I mean needs to be cleaned up. I haven't really looked at it. I've been neglecting it. I just need it cleaned up, get it ready, for tax time. And if you could take a look at that and help me out, I'd really appreciate it." And he's like, I obviously he was like, I'll pay for it. We'll figure something out. And so at the time, and this was in QuickBooks Online, I hadn't really done a whole lot in QuickBooks Online, but I knew I could do accounting and I could look at his financials and figure out, where things needed to go, especially if I had, statements. And then, I could always use spreadsheets just to help myself because sometimes QuickBooks doesn't allow you to look back and forth real easy.
Yeah.
So after doing that, I was like, okay, well, that was kind of fun. And I mean, I talked to him again a couple times, and he was like, I feel like you could really just, have a business that helps people like me do that because, I mean, I'm not the only one who has books that are neglected. And so I was like, okay, well, I could do that. And so I knew that, QuickBooks Cleanup it's a great service, but obviously it needs to be somewhat paired with more of a bookkeeping or accounting or some other service that allows you to keep some control on their books for them, or just help them with their books depending on how they feel about it. And, kind of doing that, I signed on, one new client who was a referral. And with him, I kind of learned that, small business owners, they really need somebody who's going to be a partner with them and help them with all the questions they might have about being in business.
Yeah.
It's not so much about only accounting or like payroll time is coming up. Can you help me with that? It's very much like, well, if I decide I want to bring on an employee, how's that going to look? And how do I know if I'm ready? When do, and maybe like what's going on year over year with my financials? Am I making more money now, or am I making less money? There's a lot more questions than just like, well, are all my transactions categorized right? So going through that, I kind of was like, well, I really want to be. So, I mean, Riverwood Consulting had already been started, but I mean, it was one of those things where it's like, I don't want it to just be accounting. I don't want it to just be bookkeeping. I want it to be helping business owners in what areas they need help in.
Totally, absolutely. And I appreciate you sharing that. And I would agree with you that a lot of people think that, starting a business is just getting clients and doing said service and then getting paid for it. And there's a billion other things that go into it as well. So what were you doing before, Riverwood and before your
Right.
controller role and everything like that? A little more
Yeah.
about your background.
Yeah, so I graduated from the University of Mary here in Bismarck, North Dakota. When I graduated, I got my first job at a regional bank here. I was a finance specialist. I was there for 3 years, kind of did a few different roles, and ended up my final role was a treasury analyst. At the same time, I was getting my CPA, and the bank I was at was really good at helping me, yeah, and encouraging me to get that. And so I really appreciated that. And so that was helpful to my journey of getting my CPA. But then once I had it, I was like, well, I've always kind of been interested in doing tax. So that was one role. I was like, well, I know I can't really do that at a bank. There's not really any role for that. So I looked at the public accounting firms in town here. There was a few different ones that I applied to. I ended up going to Eide Bailey, who is a top 25 public accounting firm, and I was in their tax department as a tax associate. And so I did that for 2 years. Really got to see individual returns, corporate returns. I mean, really big returns, and just like more every day. So I felt like that was a really good, it showed me how varied business can be as well. And even in that role, I mean, that helped to see like, okay, well, a lot of these businesses that are bigger still don't have a great understanding of all of their accounting functions, finance and even, yeah, and obviously tax planning. They're relying on us at Ideally. So that was kind of a good way to see like what do business owners really need. And yeah, tax was the service we were providing, but a lot of the tax prep and a lot of the conversations that I feel like, were a lot more helpful to their business in more ways than just tax.
Absolutely. Working at a public accounting firm definitely gave you, the skills needed to start your own firm and all the headaches that comes with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So then, I mean, and after that, I was there for 2 years, and a position came open at Frontier Precision. They were actually a client of Eide Bailey. And I looked at, this role, and I knew I didn't really want to stay at Eide Bailey and go down the partner track there. So that was kind of one of those moments where it's like, well, what else is out there? And this job came up, and it was actually a new role, and everything I had heard about the company was all good things, which was great. And so I, yeah, went and sat down with their CFO and their HR manager and kind of had a conversation with them. And it turned out it was going to be a good fit. It was a new role, and they needed someone who could hop in with, different experience, not just straight out of college or not just straight out of public accounting, but some, industry experience as well. And so I feel like honestly, my banking experience really helped because I knew, accounts payable, accounts receivable, kind of how the ins and outs of different, industry functions go, which you wouldn't
Yeah.
see in public accounting. And so once I started there, and I've been there for about a year and a half now.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Experience trumps all. Better, more than a degree, more than anything. If you have experience, you could kind of go anywhere with that.
Yes.
So now kind of focusing on the business, what kinds of challenges, are you seeing with the businesses you're working with when it comes to financial strategy or compliance with taxes and everything like that?
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, and just financial wise, I'm sure this will be echoed a lot over the next couple months or so. But I mean, tariffs at Frontier Precision has been a big thing because we work with we're technically we're a retailer, so we purchase items from the manufacturers, and all of these manufacturers that we buy goods from are raising their prices in different ways. And so we've been having meetings and discussing just like what the best way we want to, handle that. Like, is there certain places we're comfortable marking up products? Is there certain areas where we want to just stay competitive and eat the margin and just kind of go with it from there? So that's definitely been interesting. And I mean, yeah, different solutions there. I mean, it's just, it changes too, and I feel like it'll change in a month. So who knows? We'll see how that ends up going. But that's been, the big conversation there. And then I mean now it's just we just got over, for the 415 individual deadline. So I mean, tax wise, it's just been, getting extensions in, making sure that everybody has payments done as needed. So we haven't really had a whole lot of, I mean, crazy tax compliance things that are new. I mean, everyone's kind of looking for that expiration of the TCJA, which is, you know, coming up, but hopefully the legislator can figure something out to either extend those or figure out a different path and give us some certainty on that. So those areas are interesting, just to see kind of how they're gonna play out. And I mean, yeah, this year will definitely change those, I feel.
Oh yeah, everything is absolutely insane this year. So what is your guys' game plan for the tariffs? Do you have anything in mind, or you kind of just taking it step by step to just see what happens?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things we're going to implement at least a few different options for marking up products depending on what they are, because we're also in several different lines. So we are a Trimble authorized retailer, and that means the products we get from Trimble, we're, a retailer of their products, and that's more on the geospatial surveying mapping side of things. We also do a lot of unmanned aircraft products, and with those ones, I mean, a lot of those are coming from different countries, and those are a lot harder to, we don't have the margin that we have with Trimble products. So we're kind of looking at a mixed approach depending on the line, and trying to come up with, like, okay, what would be a number that we feel comfortable with, and let's just implement it for this line, and then implement it for this line, and then check in again in 2 weeks and see how we feel, and just what the financial burden looks like. So yeah, it's definitely fluid. I feel like we have an okay strategy going forward, but yeah, we didn't want to be too complicated, because there's no need to get, I mean, so complicated on something that is still so new.
Yeah,
So
and
there's a
it's
lot of
still changing as well. Who knows
exactly,
what's going to happen in 2 weeks from now?
exactly.
So in your role at Frontier, Luke, what does your day-to-day look like? Driving long-term operational strategies and everything like that.
Yeah, so the operational side has been something that I've gotten into a lot more in this role. Finance, like we had finance functions going. And I mean, I took over some smaller pieces, but really the big need was in the operational side of things. So when I started, she was more of just a NetSuite run reports type, IT type gal, and she had been there for 15 years. And so when she left, there was a lot of, like, knowledge of what she did. And then also at the same time, 2 months after I started, our main purchaser, who had been there for, I think, 30 years, she left. And so that left, so a lot of institutional knowledge walked out of the building.
Yeah,
And with that, we kind of had to really rethink how, we're doing a lot of things, because we have, 15 plus locations. We're sending inventory all over the country. And it was one thing when you had a person who was very in on all the inventory, and knew where everything was, and knew all the products, and knew what was needed where and
yeah,
when. And then, the person who took on that role was like, well, I don't know that, so I need to figure out different systems to put in place to actually, allow us to be successful and get that inventory accurately to the right place.
totally. So it's more than just financials. It's kind of like the bigger business moves
Yeah,
per se.
absolutely. And
Gotcha.
and I would say too, Frontier Precision is definitely in still a growth mindset. So they haven't, they're just working on getting all these efficiencies locked down. And so, being part of that is good, but it's not like we're really focused on revenue growth and gross profit growth versus, like, bottom line net income. And we
Yeah,
care about net income, but it's not the spot that we're looking to increase. So that's been something that we've been able to do, just more procedures helping us to figure out, well, how are we growing, how are we making better margins on our products.
totally. And for someone who's watching this and maybe doesn't understand what operational strategy means, what does that maybe look like in a company like Frontier, or for someone who doesn't understand what that means?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so we have an ERP system, so that means we just have an accounting system that sets up everything for us, essentially. So part of that has been adding functionality to that system to allow us to, we have reorder points on inventory, we have better transfer processes of inventory. So some of those, some of those items are still kind of detailed. I mean, really at the base of it, a lot of it is just putting together standard operating procedures on different areas that maybe didn't have it before because it only touched two people. Well, now it touches about, 10. So if it's going to be that widespread, we need everyone to be on the same page of what we're doing. And even on the and so like operational, like, we really focus down on the corporate side of like, okay, how are we doing stuff? But then pushing stuff out to different locations and to salespeople, to office administration, and just being like, hey, like this is the best process, and we need everyone to kind of follow this
Gotcha.
and kind of implement different strategies that way and just have more consistent, yeah, invoicing, inventory, and yeah, sales order processes.
Makes sense. So it's making sure everything's in line. Kind of touching on what we hit earlier with everything going crazy in 2025 with tariffs and whatnot. Another major thing that's coming into play is, new technologies and AI with everything like that. Are you guys experimenting with anything, and maybe at Frontier or Riverwood, or how do you guys feel about that?
Yeah. I would say on the Riverwood side, I mostly just use like ChatGPT for writing up different operating agreements and like a scope of work
Yeah,
pieces on my engagement letters. I haven't looked into, near as many resources as there are available. I wanted to mention one thing on this because I've been thinking about how, accounting systems work, and we went back to, QuickBooks cleanup. And, a lot of the AI products out there are saying like we can simplify a lot of your processes. And I would just say if you are, an outsourced bookkeeper, accountant, and you decide that one of those products is going to really help you, make sure you know the back end of what's happening with that too, because I can just imagine that if you have a client and you suggest, hey, we're going to use this new product, new AI service, it's going to help us, make a more efficient monthly close. And if it does something that you don't know why it did that thing, you're going to lose a lot of trust and a lot of credibility with your client immediately because they're going to be like, what do you mean you don't know what it's doing? Because you were the one who helped them and suggested and implemented it for them. So, I mean, really vet products, I would say, is just figure out what they are, if they're a good fit.
totally,
But
100%. And I think that's a big thing I've been seeing people, worrying that AI is going to take over accounting, or AI is going to replace everything in bookkeeping, or everything in the processes, and that's just not true. People always need the human to human contact, and that trust. No one's going to trust the machine. No one wants to talk to a machine, and so yeah, AI can automate certain workflows, and it's starting to grow more like that. But
And I mean, if it double, if you have a workflow that it's, taking over, if you
yeah,
can double check that work, make sure it went through right, that's going to save a lot of headache down the road, I think. So, and
absolutely.
I think it will be helpful, and I think it'll really, really make, some of these processes a lot easier for, especially outsourced accountants. So,
Totally. Last year, actually, I worked at an accounting internship during the tax season, and they had this new AI machine that was filling out the tax forms and whatnot, but they still had all the interns manually checking every single one. And a lot of the time, they were making errors, and that we had to go in and manually correct. And so that was just very apparent to me when I saw that AI can be a great tool, but it's not perfect, and you always need someone to check over the work that it's doing because you don't want to mess up a client and lose them. That's a headache and everything like that.
yeah, absolutely.
Totally. So, looking ahead, from your perspective, what trends you think will shape the future of accounting and finance, other than AI, obviously?
Yeah. Well, I think we talk a lot about the accounting shortage and just like young people going into accounting. I think that's one area that will definitely shape accounting because I feel like I've seen a lot more, kind of like I mentioned, outsourced accounting, and it'll feel like that's going to really change how big public accounting is seen because the big four have, all of these Fortune 500 companies that they work with. Well, they can't do all of the, small and medium sized businesses also. And I feel like that's where outsourced accountants are really going to help bring into uh, business owners different accounting processes that they can't have internally. There's always going to be need for, some internal accounting staff, but it's going to be really hard to find the people. So I feel
Absolutely.
like that's one trend that's really going to change. And I mean, I feel like if you're going to start a firm now, if you want to start one yourself, I feel like there's a lot of opportunity out there for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Outsourcing is super easy nowadays compared to maybe a few years ago.
Right.
So from your perspective as a firm owner, what is your approach to, scaling an accounting team or optimizing processes? What is your secret to growing?
Yeah. I mean, I would just say making sure you have a good networking connection with, I mean, accountants for one. Like if as long as you're involved, so like the North Dakota CPA Society has a local chapter here in Bismarck. I'm one of the directors of that. So I've been working on setting up events and doing lunches. And so being involved helps just so you know who's out there in accounting and like allows you to be in front of people. And also in the same way, networking helps you with finding new clients and small business owners who might need help, and just asking questions is helpful too. Like there's a lot of people who think they're fine, or they might think they might not even know you do something like that. So if you just ask them, that was I had a client that I just signed on, we'll start doing services for them in May here. And he was one of my friends, and I asked him about, he runs a decking company. And I asked him about, he was doing one of my coworkers' deck, and I was like, "Yeah, so you're, working on this, and what's that look like?" And we were texting back and forth, and I just said, "Who does your guys' accounting?" And I mean, I just asked the question, and he was like, "Well, actually, we're looking for someone right now." And I was like, "Well, I mean, check me out. I'd appreciate it." And that, led to a conversation and a, sit down lunch meeting. And sure enough, we're signed on for May. So I was like, all right, well, that's exactly what, you know, I want to happen for referrals, and just being able to be out there and ask the questions, because I mean, a lot of people are going to be starting businesses too. Like, I mean, I'm still, I would say I'm still young enough that a lot of people are working and in their first or second job, but after that, it's like a lot of people are like, well, maybe I want to do my own business. And once they
Absolutely.
start that, it's like, well, where do I start? Or how do I do that? And if you can be there for them, then, they're gonna want to work with you for a long time.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's gold. I mean, especially in the beginning, most people, the reason their business fails is because they're scared to take action, ask those questions. And another huge thing that my dad told me, and I come from a line of accountants, is that every business needs accounting. In a recession, it's recession proof. In a pandemic, literally whatever the case may be, accounting is always going to be needed. Very valuable advice there. Last question for you, Luke. What's some advice you give to someone in a controller or in a senior finance role who's thinking of, branching off and starting his own firm like you did? And then also, where can people connect with you, if they want to reach out or learn more?
Sure. Yeah. Well, to answer your first question, I would definitely say, start making those connections, start networking. And a lot of people are going to say that. And, I'm not talking start, sending out 100 emails on, LinkedIn or something. Just go to your local functions, try and go to, some chamber events or things like that. And just, talk to lenders, talk to business owners, talk to, anyone in the community who, has a good pulse and is there to learn also, because you never know. They might have a referral for you, if you ask them and say like, "Hey, I'm looking at starting, my own accounting services business," or, "I want to do tax," or, something specific. They're going to be like, "Oh, well, now that I know you, anytime someone, mentions that, I'll think of you," especially if you have a real genuine relationship with that person.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. Absolutely, yeah. Just building connections, building relationships is fundamental of everything business. No one's gonna buy from someone they don't trust or someone they don't like, or someone that they don't want to work with. And so being able to connect with people is the number one thing. So where can we find you?
I'm pretty active in liking and commenting on things. I don't post a whole bunch of content myself, but yeah, Luke Odegard. And then my consulting business is Riverwood Consulting. We're also on LinkedIn. My website is www.riverwoodconsulting.com. And it's just a web page that kind of shows some of the services we do, some testimonials. But yeah, it's just a start for me to show people like we have a business, and we're interested in helping out business owners of all sorts. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me, either either on LinkedIn or yeah, off of my website. So
I'll make sure we link that in the notes below. All right, everybody. Everyone go check out Luke and what he's doing. He's doing great things, and I really think that he's going to grow and go far places. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we will catch you guys in the next episode.